Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to another episode of my F1 23 My Team Career Mode. This is episode number 32 today for the British Grand Prix in Season 2. If you guys did miss the previous one at Portimao for the very first time on this game, then be sure to go check that one out. Before you see this one, we also had a very strikingly different pink livery for a different sprite flavour, and we do have a special little livery for this episode as well, with a subtle Union Jack on the engine cover for our home race and the team's home race. And at the halfway point of this season, we're also celebrating signing Daniel Ricciardo back to our team for the remainder of this season. He's of course won a race now with the team at the Monaco GP, 96 rated, 97 focus, and you know, as of late in the last few episodes, he's been doing what we need him to do, scoring some good points. Yes, maybe in the last 2-3 episodes, maybe not the same lofty height as that win at Monaco, but I think overall doing a great job in the top 10, 59 points. It's a lot more than we could have maybe hoped for at the very start of the season, but I think there's maybe more to come from him, and you know, those couple of points are crucial in this constructors fight because we still stay ahead of Red Bull Racing, of Ferrari, but things are heating up because Ferrari now are only 8 points behind Red Bull actually after a very solid race for the team, with Leclerc winning around Portimao. So they are going to be a threat. It's not just going to be Red Bull, and you know, Mercedes are still there as well. So at the halfway mark, it's really hard to tell who's going to be our biggest challenger. Of course, in terms of the Drivers' Championship, Lando Norris is, you know, in terms of numbers, closest to us. But, you know, depending on how the form of Ferrari goes, will Sainz get back up there? Will Leclerc be making a charge? Obviously, we had Hamilton having that shock win at the Austrian Grand Prix. So it's still all to play for with 9 rounds to go, including the one we're on as we're in round 8 of the entire season. And to that effect, we now turn our attention to a pretty big upgrade we've had our eyes on, and a pretty ultimate upgrade, you could say, that we've had our eyes on, because we've got the final weight reduction upgrade on the chassis side, ultimate upgrade. And as you can see on the bottom right, that's probably going to take us to just about where Aston Martin are. They've got the best chassis on the grid, followed by Haas, surprisingly. So that's why Aston and Haas have been climbing up the order in the R&D chart, but maybe they're lacking an aero, still an engine power, which is why we've not really seen Aston and Haas really comfortably fighting for podiums quite yet. And we're continuing this, you know, unfamiliar territory of actually spending some time and R&D points on the durability as we purchase another upgrade, because I just want to make sure we have a decent engine to get us to the end of the season. We are getting some very worn parts, so there are going to have to be some penalties coming in sooner rather than later, so I'm just trying to negate some of those, maybe, if we can, towards the end of this season. Ferrari continue to be the best car on paper going into the British Grand Prix, but Aston Martin have made some strides now with a pretty decent upgrade in comparison to the rest of the field into Silverstone. Obviously, it's their home race. Their base is literally at Silverstone, pretty much a stone's throw away, so they're wanting to do well. So Aston in the driving seat to maybe challenge Ferrari, and it means we actually subtly slip down to 4th best on the grid. We're pretty much, there's nothing to separate ourselves and Red Bull though, and Haas are pretty damn close, as well as Mercedes, to be fair. So the entire top 10 is going to be quite a tight affair, and surprisingly you can see Alpine there on nearly catching and overtaking McLaren. So Fernando Alonso's you know, shock move back to Aston Martin after he went to McLaren in season 1 midway through the season seems to be paying off. Alonso's actually made a good decision there, because his old team McLaren floundering a bit, and his new team Aston Martin, or new old team, is bringing the upgrades at a crucial point in the season where you maybe feel like the momentum could turn a little bit, potentially. You know, we're getting to the halfway. This is where you could build enough momentum to mount a late title charge. I don't know. And Alonso's done well enough to still be in the frame potentially if he can get some consistency up. The same can be said for Ferrari, who topped the R&D chart. Leclerc just won. If he goes on to win more or get on multiple podiums, you know, he's going to be up there. Sainz as well, you know, start the season with 3 podiums in a row. If he just finds a bit of that form again, he could be right up there with ourselves and Lando Norris. So it's really all to play for still, with 9 rounds to go, like I said earlier, as we go into now qualifying, and it is clear skies at the moment. But as always here with Silverstone, there is a threat of rain coming on later into this day. But at the moment, sunny skies in Q1, and we're on our first flying lap, which has been pretty decent so far in the first sector. But Perez, what is he doing? Parking it at Cops as we turned in, I could see that crash happening from a mile off, so he backed out of it, and Perez, Agent Perez maybe, has done his, more senior Red Bull team a favour there, done Lando Norris a favour in terms of holding us up, and he plays a few little games with us in the middle sector, and I vent my frustration at him as well on the exit of Magda Beckett, and he actually follows me through then for this entire flying lap. You can see he's right up our gearbox in the mirrors there on the left hand side with the proximity arrow, so he's annoyingly probably got a bit of a tow from me on this second flyer. Thankfully, I actually had enough fuel to do 2 consecutive laps. I was wanting to do 2 consecutive laps. It's just a shame the first one was absolutely ruined by Perez, just, I don't know, not getting out of the way at all at Cops, even after the patch was meant to fix that for AI when they're on a slow out lap. So we come across the line, and you can see actually Perez, annoyingly, has actually gone quicker than us because he got a tow on from us on that lap. So we have to go again and burn a second set of soft tyres, which may not be as much of a nuisance if it is going to actually rain in Q3, but if it doesn't, that just means we have one less set to use in that crucial top 10 shootout, and that's all just thanks to that AlphaTauri. So it really has done his more senior partner team Red Bull a solid there in terms of our fight versus them, our fight versus Lando Norris as we cross the line up into P8. It's an improved lap time to get us through the session, but just was a lot more annoying and frustrating than it needed to really be. But Ricciardo's looking very, very strong there, splitting only the 2 Ferraris who are, coming off the back of obviously a race winner Portimao, so they're in fine form. But you can kind of see almost very much like the R&D chart is indicating, Ferrari are quick, Aston are there as well, with Alexander Albon looking pretty decent as well, and the Mercs, despite being below us, and they've been below us for the entire time this season, and Red Bull and Ferrari for a lot of it, they're just still so good and consistent. Russell and Hamilton's AI, they're just basically too highly rated to count them out basically. And in these fights, as we go into Q2, Albon showing Aston are here properly there, going quickest at the time, and then ending up in P4. And it's like I said, the 2 Ferraris though, 1 and 3 again. This time it's Russell that splits them. We get through in P6, Ricciardo as well, which is good to see, and Albon's actually looking the stronger of the 2 Aston Martins though in P4. Alonso only just about gets by in P10. Norris and Verstappen through as well, but it looks like it's going to be a question of, can Ferrari actually bag this pole position after being quickest in both sessions? So they really are on form, and those upgrades are working well for them over on lap as we go into Q3. It is raining now, it's overcast, the droplets of rain are collecting on the camera. You can see I'm on soft tyres because I went out and I asked my engineer on the out lap, are we on the right set of tyres? And he said yes, even though it's raining, dries still seem like the best compound. So very weird situation. We've had a few of these in real life sometimes where it's so damp, but there's still enough grip for the dries, the slicks to do their work as Sainz goes quickest of all as we go through into the last sector. I am a little bit worried though. The AI are very, very strong in these kind of scenarios where it's wet and you're in slicks. Kind of the reverse to how we were in Portimao, where we were on inters and outdoing them. And to be fair, maybe we could have gone better on inters, I don't know. We won't ever know, because that is my one and only lap here on the dry tyres. And I decided I don't think it's even worth going out onto intermediates. And we're going to end this session in P9, a whopping 1.3 seconds off the pole position time of Carlos Sainz. I don't know if Sainz set his lap time like he was the first one out or not. That could just be how ridiculous the AI were in these conditions. But our teammate, Daniel Ricciardo, despite being 4/10 off pole, is second place though. So some huge change of lap times and maybe the conditions, etc, etc. But our teammate's done amazingly. He's on the front row and I'm down here in my home race down in P9. So really has outdone us there, and maybe the new contract signings buoyed him and given him a bit of more confidence and focus potentially to actually maximize his result. Hamilton up there in third place. Like I said, Albon's looked the stronger of the 2 Aston Martins all Saturday as he's up in P4, and Alonso floundering down in P10. So and Red Bull, I mean, they've taken a step back. I mean, we have as well, but they're down in P5 and P7. So definitely the tides are turning a little bit. Ferrari, Aston strong, and Merc are still there and actually drawing some energy energy from the crowd, it would seem, to be quicker in Q3 here. So we've got a very interesting race ahead of us. Our teammate could be fighting for the race win at the start of this race, and we've got some work to do to try and catch up. But is the pace going to be there now to actually catch up? Because Aston are ahead of us in the R&D chart. Merc looking pretty solid, so maybe the time of us coming through from a bad qualifying is starting to maybe creep away from us, and this is just where we are in terms of our pace. But Ricciardo gives me some hope being there on the front row, so let's just try and match him as much as we can and try and see if we can catch him up in the race. Let's go to the grid.
You join us in the United Kingdom today, or Great Britain as it's alternatively known. Well, it's certainly a great day today as we welcome you to one of the crown jewels of British sport, a track of speed, history and drama. It's Silverstone. It's the British Grand Prix. Straddling the border of Northamptonshire and Buckinghamshire, the 18 corners of Silverstone circuit form the 3.6-mile beating heart of Formula One. It's been reinvented over the years, with Turn 1 now the fast right-hander of Abbey, but the magic of racing is as strong here as it's ever been. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks like for today's race. Daniel Ricciardo starts from pole position today, and Lewis Hamilton completes the front row. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Albon, Verstappen, Russell, Norris, Leclerc, the owner driver, Fernando Alonso, Sargent, Sainz, Hülkenberg, Gasly, Ocon, Joe, Oscar Piastri, Magnussen, Bottas, Perez, Liam Lawson, Tsunoda, and Lance Stroll brings the grid to a close. With preparations almost complete, let's head down to the track. Anthony Davidson joins me once again in the commentary box, and it's fantastic to have you with us here, but I'm curious, as a man with experience out on the track, how do you stop those pre-race nerves from becoming overwhelming when you're lining up on the grid?
Well, I imagine they'll be starting to feel the adrenaline as they anticipate the rundown into Turn 1, a bit like preparing to go into battle. The unknown situation will bring nerves, but that's a good thing. It will keep them focused on the moment and on their surroundings as we build towards the start of the Grand Prix.
So huge development overnight then for the pole sitter, Carlos Sainz and Ferrari. For the second race in a row, they take some form of penalty. This time it's a pretty hefty one, as he's nowhere near the front row. He's actually behind us as we're elevated to P8, and it elevates our teammate Daniel Ricciardo onto pole position. So at least one of our cars is on pole for the British Grand Prix, for the home race. Unfortunately for me, Lady Luck is not on my side this time for this home race as we're down in P8, but good on Ricciardo being there on the front row to pick up the pieces for Ferrari. And again, this is the big question mark. Ferrari, quickest team on the grid, and all of a sudden they're starting this race P7, and Sainz, I don't even know, P14 I think it was, or P13, so they've got some serious work to do in the race. We have now maybe got a better chance. Maybe Ricciardo can defend, and in that time we can maybe close up to him. Let's just see how the race start goes. I hope he can just keep the P1 at least into Turn 1, and for us we're looking to make up positions as we go to 5 red lights to the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. Lights out and we're underway. Ricciardo does get a good start. We do as well as we jump Leclerc as we... Oh God! Norris! What are you doing? As we go to Turn 1, Lando Norris just steps out the throttle in the Red Bull, and it's a disaster for us. In our home race on lap 1, we've got major damage to the front wing. That's going to have to be a pit stop on lap 1 here. We can't go on. You're going to see the understeer, especially in Sector 2. I mean, I reconfirmed that with my engineer by asking him about the vehicle condition. He also thinks we should come in and make a pit stop, and you can see the understeer coming through as we go into Luffield. The Sauber is round the outside. We make more contact with Joe, and now our front wing is even more damaged. That's incredibly bad. That is... Oh, that's just literally the worst start to a British Grand Prix ever we could have not hoped for. And meanwhile, the Australian on the other side of the garage on our team leads the way by 1.3. Ricciardo, just like in Monaco, showing when he's at the front of the grid, he could control the race from here. And I'm hoping for our team's sake he can, because we're going to have a pretty miserable time, because we're P11 and we're going to have to make a pit stop for hard tyres and try and go to the end. Let me tell you, that's not that we're going to have a long day. It's going to be a long 26 laps, a very lonely first part of the race. It's going to be absolutely ages until we see someone in this race now as we come in for that damage. Oh, that's just so bad. Union Jack on our engine cover, and it's brought us bad luck. We actually had a pretty okay British Grand Prix, making that 300 IQ strategy, wasn't it, in wet conditions in Season 1 to come through for P5, which at the time, in Season 1's British Grand Prix, was an amazing result for the car where it was at. And cut to Season 2 here, our car is capable of leading this race right now in the hands of Daniel Ricciardo, and here I am making that pit stop in stone dead last, absolute miles away from anyone now, as Ricciardo is leading still by 1.3, growing to 1.4 seconds the gap is to Albon in second place. So it's well, at least one of the Brits is doing well. Albon in second, Hamilton fourth, chasing after Russell. So we've got a Brit 2, 3, 4 at least here. Verstappen and Norris lying astern. Leclerc, Alonso and Sainz as the Spaniard of Alonso split the two Ferraris then. Sainz has done very well though, to be fair, to recover from where he was starting P13, I think it was, already into the top 10. And Sargent, the American, doing very well, I must say, in the Haas actually to keep up with them in P10. But yeah, Ricciardo leading and growing his lead to 1.5 there as he got to the end of lap 2. And this is where we are, so far back, just going through Luffield there. 31 seconds away from the next car. Absolute calamity. And it's because of that. It was such a light, simple touch. And that's ruined, well, I think it's ruined our entire race. There might be a glimmer of hope, maybe, if we can go long on the hards and there's some infighting, etc. But yeah, the Red Bull definitely lifted off. Like, he definitely wasn't full throttle. Like, if you just listen, there's that little judge in response to Verstappen. And if we slow it down on board from Leclerc, you can see Lando slowing up, and we're gaining so much more on him compared to his distance to his own teammate and the Mercedes there. So I don't think he brake checked us, but there was definitely a bit of lifting off that I just did not see coming, basically. I am the car behind, so I think you can put some fault on me as well. It's just it's a racing, if that happened in real life, it'd be a racing incident. It's just really, really unfortunate, and I'm just frustrated that it happened to us, and it, of course, had to be our championship rival, as we now see Albon, though, on lap 4. Meanwhile, at the front, where all the action is happening, so far away from me, Albon re-overtaking Russell for P2, as Russell, I assume, had got him at some point, but Albon getting back into P2. But both of them have actually closed the gap to Ricciardo a little bit, because the gap has fallen to 1 second. So Ricciardo, I think he started on softs, maybe is feeling the tyre wear of those soft tyres. So we've got quite a few people on softs, but those on mediums may suddenly find that they're in a better position in terms of race pace very, very soon as we go on through this race. Lap 5, this is maybe when the softs start to wear out, and people like Albon on the mediums could benefit, and he's going to start chasing after Ricciardo as he's now within 1 second. So that DRS is coming soon, as Verstappen is in P4 at the moment, having overtaken Hamilton. Hamilton comes back at the Dutchman and is going to bring his teammate Lando Norris, Verstappen's teammate that is, along with him, as Norris goes for the move on the outside, and Verstappen has now maybe lost 2 positions in the span of 1 sector here, as Lando once again is putting his foot down as the leader of the Red Bull Racing team in this season at least, and showing Verstappen has definitely lost some confidence in that Red Bull car, as we now watch, oh no, Ricciardo losing the lead, but Albon flying high. The Aston Martin leads the British Grand Prix. Albon gets the move on Ricciardo. There's still a lot of this race to go though, so maybe Ricciardo can come back at him, but the Aston Martin seems to have some great pace, because Alonso just overtook Sainz and Verstappen. Verstappen is rapidly falling down this race. He's just been overtaken by Sainz. He's gone from P4 to P8 in the matter of a couple of laps here. What has gone on to Verstappen this season? Did losing to Hamilton last season really put that much of a number on his confidence maybe in that car? Maybe so, because he's down in P8. Meanwhile, his teammate is trying to fight Hamilton to keep the P5. before, but the Mercs actually have some great pace. To say they're the 5th fastest car on paper, they're quicker than Ferrari, they're quicker than Red Bull right now in this race, but Aston Martin are definitely looking good as the 2nd best team on the grid on the index chart, as Alonso is now in prime position to overtake Norris and may even go for a move on Hamilton. Lando goes defensive whilst also maybe trying his own move on the Mercedes. Alonso defiant on the outside as the two bang tyres. But I think the Spaniard's going to book in this position for P5. The Aston's looking strong because Albon still leads the race then by 6/10 to Daniel Ricciardo, as on lap 10 then Sainz with a lock-up. He goes wide. Ooh, nearly makes contact with his own teammate, and he's coming to the pits, and oh, Sargent's held him. They're both on the grass. Oh, Sainz has been spun back onto the circuit, and he's going to come back in through to the pits. Sargent cuts across. Oh, Sainz has hit the pit entry wall. It's happened. I've seen this glitch so many times on Reddit, and now it's happened in our own career mode series. Sainz wants to come into the pits. Sargent doesn't, but he's on the wrong side. The two collide on the grass. Sainz spins. He's still adamant about coming in, and as he comes in across the grass, hits the pit entry, and he's still there. He's still there. Oh, Carlos Sainz. Oh, he's still actually trying to make it into the pits, bless him, as he tries to accelerate, but I think his car's getting stuck on the grass a little bit. Logan Sargent, he was running really well in the top 10. Now I'm not too sure, because he definitely lost a lot of time on the grass, but he continued on as he wanted to, and fair play, Sainz is still adamant about coming in, but I think he's still stuck there, as he's now disqualified. Carlos Sainz has been disqualified. This was the man on pole. Not only did he have a penalty, removing his pole, he's now been disqualified in the race. It can't get much worse than that. That is absolutely pain. That's just pain. That's the definition of pain, and that's the definition of Ferrari pain. It really is. Wow. Well, that's brought out the safety car, and as you can clearly see, I've come in under this safety car as I've been talking about all of that and reacting to that very comical crash for the Ferrari. And that's allowed us to now go on to mediums. Obviously, we'll bunch up to the cars ahead of us. So we'll be resetting ourselves a little bit in this race on the mediums at the back of the grid. But this is a replay then on board from Sargent. You can see Sargent the entire time is turning left because he wants to continue his race. He was looking to go on the racing line, and he's still doing that as he comes back onto circuit. And in his mirrors, you can see the Ferrari cutting back onto the grass because the onboard from Sainz will show the entire time he's turning right, wanting to go into that pit lane, and gets half spun by the Haas. There's Logan still coming back onto the circuit. It's amazing how they cross paths on the grass, and then Sainz has an absolute brain fart there and crashes into the tyre barrier that separates the grass from the pit entry, as everyone now is coming in eventually. Obviously, we came in early because we were so far behind. We were behind the incident. These guys were ahead of the incident. Albon still in the lead. Ricciardo, though, loses second place. He loses second place. It's a slow stop for him. It's a quicker one for Mercedes and Russell. So the order is going to be Albon, Russell, Ricciardo, Lando Norris in 4th place, Hamilton 5th as it was. Alonso down to P6 though. So actually, hang on. Alonso's lost out then in the pit stop. I think probably just because of the double stack with his own teammate of Albon. So that's frustrating for him. But equally frustrating for Ricciardo to lose out to Russell. And there was no double stack involved. That was just a slow pit stop. Verstappen down in P8 behind Leclerc. Hulkenberg out of nowhere in the Sauber now P9, and Sargent, thankfully for him, he's still in P10 actually, so his race didn't get ruined by that Sainz incident. But here we go then. This is what I mean, our race has been reset. We're now halfway through this race, lap 13 of 26. We're on fresh mediums. I know everyone else is either on fresh mediums or hards, but we're not 31 seconds back now. So this is where our real race begins. Carlos Sainz has given us an opportunity to maybe do something in this race and come back for points, come back for maybe even a top 5 if we have enough pace here as we send it on Sergio Perez at Village, and not wanting to waste any time starting these overtakes, but at the same time also being cautious not to get into any more damage. We don't want another situation from lap 1. We absolutely have to keep it clean. We've got a good opportunity here on the mediums to do some work, especially against all the people that have chosen hard tyres. As we get a little pop-up about our gearbox being a little bit warm then. I don't think it was that high going into the race weekend. 80%. What?
I'm afraid. Watch out for jams and misgears.
What? Our gearbox has failed. That's us out of the race. I'm not control the car. We're out. What? Just like that. We're out of the British Grand Prix. Are you kidding me? Oh my God. We got a second chance to recover in this race. And the F1 gods have looked down upon us and said, no, it wasn't meant to be. Gearbox failure. What? That's a new one. Our gearbox was nowhere near even worn. It was like maybe 45% and it just jumped to 80% there, but wasn't indicating a failure on the heads-up display. It wasn't red, it was yellow, so that's why it confused me. But then the message came up to say that we've had a failure. Meanwhile, whilst we were retiring, Russell was overtaking Albon, and it's paused here because this is the moment the game cut off my race. So sadly, it doesn't simulate the rest of it that we can watch it. But this is how it ended then. Russell in P1, Albon second, Ricciardo third, and us walking back to the back of the garage. It's a retirement in our home race. Oh, bloody hell.
Yet another historic win under their belts. Well done to the whole team at Mercedes. Anthony Davidson, how do you think they were able to set themselves apart today?
I feel like consistency was probably the key today. There's being quick, and then there's being quick lap after lap after lap. If you can do that, you can capitalise on other people's errors without making many of your own. And that's an approach that can push you a long way up the field.
So after a magnificent race, we can now see the drivers making their way to the podium. Once again, it's the Silver Arrows who take the top spot. A well-earned victory for Mercedes.
So Russell able to hold on to that P1 that he got just as we finished retiring. He overtook Albon in the last sector and held it through. And it's going to be that same top three that we ended with as we retired. Russell from Albon. Ricciardo gets on the podium. So at least one of our cars is on the podium for this home race to show off that Union Jack livery in Parc Ferme in the top three pen. But frustrating times for us in all senses. You know, the lap one incident was its own thing. We had a second chance with the safety car to come back through, and then Lady Luck completely said, no, you're meant to have a rubbish race around Silverstone because we got a gearbox failure that I had no inkling was coming, by the way. Like I said, I'm adamant our gearbox was not even over 50% worn, and it just jumped to 80%. I guess that was the failure, but the heads-up display showed it in yellow, so it confused me so much until the message came up that we had an actual full-on mechanical retirement. So unbelievable stuff. It's the second time we've had a mechanical failure, and it's the gearbox that's gone this time. So we do lose some ground then, and Norris catches up some ground in P2. He's only 12 points behind us now. Yeah, and the constructors, Mercedes, are now only 13 points behind us. They're the ones catching us now. All of a sudden, they've gone from P4 to P2 in one race there with Russell's win, and a pretty mediocre race for Red Bull and Ferrari, all things considered. So that's why they're in the driving seat to be the ones chasing us in P2 then, but it's still mighty close. You know, 36 points covering the top four in the standings is not a lot for a constructors fight, so it's very much game on. And the Drivers' Championship, well, we had that points gap that's really cushioned the blow of this DNF, but it can't go on like this, and we need to reset then next episode and bounce back from this. But it's a British Grand Prix to forget for us. I'm hoping this is not the start of Silverstone being a bogey circuit for us on this game, but you just never know really. But that's one to forget. But guys, if you have enjoyed the video, be sure to hit the like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you're around here, then do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 content. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.